Merci beaucoup. Je vais ouvrir ma présentation. Bien, je vous remercie pour l'invitation. Comme Fabien a dit, j'ai vécu à Montréal il y a entre 2009 et 2013. Donc, et aussi, j'ai participé dans les activités du projet Les Arts Trompeurs il y a de quelqu'un. Donc, c'est vraiment la sensation de retourner. Donc, c'est très joli ça. Donc, I will start my presentation in English, and this presentation is about artificial intelligence, but I will start with something that at first glance doesn't have much to do with artificial intelligence, which is the emergence of spiritualism, the beliefs in communication with the spirits in the 19th century. This was based on the belief that people could join seances, spiritualist seances, and connect and start communication with the beyond, with the other world. So such was in the middle of the 19th century. Such was the significance that this movement attracted. So the attention that attracted in the public sphere that one of the the most important scientists of the time, Michael Faraday, decided in 1853-54 to dedicate significant investigations on the phenomenon of spiritualism. Many believe that Faraday was the right person to do that because he was an expert in electricity and magnetism, and it was the opinion of many that behind these phenomena observed at seances, there was electricity and magnetism. However, the investigation by Faraday led to a very different outcome. At the end of his investigation, he concluded that it wasn't such external forces like electricity or even the agency of the dead to make the phenomena of spiritualism. It was instead the people who participated in seances. In his conclusion, he argued that the movements of the seance table and the other physical manifestations observed at seances were produced by sitters unconsciously for a willingness to see something happen, or sometimes consciously for fraud. So in other words, according to Faraday, it wasn't the spirits of the dead who were making spiritualism, but it was the people. So we, the humans, who were doing that, the living, yeah, let's say. So I started with this example because I think that we should do for artificial intelligence a similar thing as what Faraday did for spiritualist seances. Like Faraday, moved the attention from external forces that would create this manifestation to the role of the people doing the seances. We also have to consider not just what the technology does, but also, and sometimes also, especially how we react to the technology and how our reactions is part of what makes the functioning and the implication of this technology. And in particular, and this is related to the topic of Arcane seminar, in particular, I will focus on the issue of deception and how people's liability to be deceived is mobilized by these technologies and integrated into the very functioning of these technologies. So to start, it can be useful to show what is the approach that I use for considering the relationship between media and deception. So to look also at the history of media before also the digital media. So, well, deception is central to media technologies, but with this statement, I do not mean to suggest that like conspiracy theories, yeah, that media are manipulating us and so on. Yeah, that's not the point. The point is that media are built to adapt to our senses and intellect, and one of the ways in which this happens is through the activation of mundane, normalized forms of deception by which physiological and psychological aspects of how we perceive and navigate the world are exploited to achieve aesthetic or functional effects. I mean functional effect because they're really functional to the working, to the normal working of media. For this, in this sense, I proposed the concept of banal deception. Well, on the one side, so deception usually is used as a negative term, but deception can also be something that is more normalized and banal. On this, I draw on research in areas such as cognitive sciences that have argued that deception is ingrained and inseparable from perception. So it's not opposed to perception, but is part of our perception. And for this reason, media incorporate deception in its functioning. I can make an example that actually is taken from a book by Mark Russell, a philosopher who so explored this normalized approach to deception. So let us imagine that we are walking in the wood, yeah? And at a certain moment, we see on our side an animal, yeah? We turn and we realize that there is no animal there. It's just a tree with a strange shape. Yeah, we were deceived, but the same features, same things that made us deceive could have helped us identify a potential danger. And in fact, our evolution has shaped our perception so that we can see more easily, for instance, shapes such as a face, because this has an evolutionary advantage. Yeah, this is part of our perception. It's not something that is opposed or so goes beyond what is the functioning of our perception. We can see how this normalized dimension of deception is integrated within media technology in history. For instance, cinema was the result, the invention of cinema was the result of decades of studies about the functioning of human perceptions. It was built against and for the characteristic of human sensoria. And this deception, it's actually what makes it possible for us to enjoy the cinematic spectacle. It's not something that, of course, deceive us in a malicious way, but it's something that helps cinema work as it is. Another example is sound media. Scholars such as Jonathan Stern has shown that sound recording emerged in the second half of the 19th century from studies about human hearing. The point was not to reproduce sound as physical sound, but sound as it is perceived from our ears. And for this reason, frequencies, sound frequencies that were outside what we can hear, what the human ear can hear, were left aside. Because it was incorporated, it was created in the shape of human senses and intellect. Sometimes this took very literal forms. For instance, one of the early devices to record graphically sound, Alexander Graham Bell's phonoautograph, incorporated anatomical part, such as part of a ear and a skull of a dead man, to record graphically sound. Yeah, so literally the medium was made in the shape of our senses, so that it could work for our senses. So after this introduction to the frame of banal deception and relationship with media, let us see how these play out for deception. And we introduce in this sense actually was something that has been is also the topic of this session, which is the Turing Test. So the Turing Test was proposed in a text, in an article by Alan Turing in 1950. In this article, Turing starts with a question: can machines think? Yeah? But then in the following lines, he does something that is quite unusual. He dismisses the very question he started with. He says, well, it doesn't make sense to ask actually if machines can think, because we cannot find an agreement on what thinking means. And so he proposes an alternative to this question. An alternative is the imitation game, or now so more often called Turing test, where we have an interrogator here with the letter C who enters in communication with someone or something. C doesn't know who is or she's speaking with, and only from the conversation he or she is having with this other has to find out if it's a human or if it's a computer. If the computer convinces C, so deceives C into believing it is a human, then it will have passed the Turing test. So basically, the Turing test is a test about deception. So the computer, as mentioned, passes the test if it can deceive the human interrogator. So one of the implications of this test is that AI cannot be defined in absolute terms. In fact, Turing dismisses the question about machines thinking. Yeah? It can only be determined in relational terms, in the terms of how people project and attribute intelligence to the machine. So in this sense, Turing was a bit really like Faraday. Yeah, exactly like Faraday moved the attention from external forces to the humans who are participating in seances. Turing put humans at the very centers of the definition that he was proposing of AI. It is the humans who evaluate and decide the threshold for artificial intelligence. There is, however, a limitation, so to say, in how the Turing test approaches the topic of deception. Why? Because the Turing test poses the choice in a binary fashion. Yeah, you have to decide if it's a human or a computer. This does not fit well with usual interaction with AI. When we use ChatGPT or Siri or Alexa, we don't have to decide if it's a human or computer. We know it's a software. So something different happens, and to see what happens in this more mundane, more everyday interaction with AI, we can take up another example from the history of AI, which is the introduction of the first chatbot in history, Eliza, created by the computer scientist Joseph Weizenbaum in 1964-66. So at the time, so it was really the first decades after the emergence of computers, computer power was quite limited. And also the sophistication of software was still much to be developed. Yeah. So actually, Weizenbaum had little means to create a talking machine, so to say, a chatbot, so a conversational agent able to entertain a conversation. However, he had a quite interesting intuition. So he realized that in our conversations, what makes an interlocutor credible is not only the content of this communication, but it's also the identity, the role that we attribute to this interlocutor. Yeah? So he created a chatbot, Eliza, that was taking up the role of a psychotherapist. Why a psychotherapist? Because he thought that a psychotherapist could add relatively little to the conversation and still sound credible. Yeah. So, for instance, if someone would have mentioned his or her mother, the chatbot could just say, "Tell me more about your mother." In the context of in the frame of a psychotherapy session, this could be credible, even if it added very little to the conversation itself. Weizenbaum did not want to deceive users. Actually, his idea was to create something that could, to some extent, trick users, but only temporarily until its inner workings were revealed. As he wrote in the paper where he presented Eliza, he believed that, quote, once a particular program is a must, once its inner workings are explained in language sufficiently plain to induce understanding, its magic crumbles away. So the idea was that yeah, people will see, oh, so we'll see this as magic, yeah. But then explaining how it works will so make this magic go away, yeah, and actually would improve people's understanding of how computers work. Yeah. However, things went in a different way, as Weizenbaum described, and in this sense, banal deception enters in this story. There is a famous anecdote that Weizenbaum himself told some years later. So he told the fact that his secretary was a person who knew very well how Eliza worked. One day asked Weizenbaum to go out of the room because she wanted to tell something private to the chatbot, to Eliza. Yeah, and this really uh, it was really a big surprise for Weitzman because so he had thought that someone would know that Eliza just a kind of programming trick would not be interested in engaging in the conversation. Yeah, so he understood that it wasn't so easy to make magic crumble away from this technology. Thème later tried to make sense of what happened there. For instance, Sherry Tarkle argued that Eliza was fascinating not only because it was lifelike, but because it made people aware of their own desires to breathe life into a machine. So people actually weren't trying to unveil the fact that this was just a program and it didn't work. They were trying in a way to make it work for them because they enjoyed in somehow the experience of trying to conversate with to having a conversation with a machine. And in this sense, we can try to distinguish between what the term strong deception and banal deception for AI. In strong deception, we have users that exchange a machine for a human. This happens, for instance, at Turing Test. Sometimes it happens also with the bots on social media and in other areas. But then there is the other kind of deception, which is much more often in AI, and actually, arguably, it is integral to the functioning of AI. When users communicate with machines, they are aware to be talking with a machine, yet they still project social meanings and framing into the conversation that they have developed in their everyday conversation with humans. So they bring their the patterns and the stereotypes of their communication. So let us see how these two dimensions of deception play out in artificial intelligence today. Let us take the example of large language models such as ChatGPT. So we see that there is example of strong deception. A famous case was this engineer working for Google, Blake Lemoine, who a couple of years ago argued with the press that the large language model, so a technology similar to ChatGPT, it was experimented, it was testing, had, according to him, taken a life. He had reached sentience. Yeah. Although Google told him that this was not the case, it was just a machine that manipulated numbers and text. He professed to believe in any case in this. Yeah. We also have, however, a lot of examples. So large language model also integrate banal deception, and this is much more something much more apparent even in everyday conversation. So users show to understand perfectly well that like ChatGPT is just a software, but as by the definition of banal deception, they still apply these social frameworks and meaning. Example of this, well, for instance, a design choice that seems quite banal, quite unimportant, such as the first person pronoun, has a very significant implication, as the research has shown in the conversation. It brings a certain projection from users. Another example is the tone that is given. Yeah, large language model has are a technology that can be applied in very different areas. Yeah, for instance, with ChatGPT, the way it's the tone of the conversation is intended to create an impression of authority, relative objectivity. In other cases, the same technologies is used to achieve something very different. For instance, to have a very informal kind of a conversation, and even like an affective conversation, as in companion chat. Other example is the visualization of words and sentences. So these are made, for instance, that so that the words appear in succession, not not following how the computer code produces them, but trying to mimic how we type, no, and how we so the succession of concept. Also, this mimicking, something that is human behavior. Another example is memory. So we have the impression that ChatGPT has memory because ChatGPT remembers, so to say, what has been said before in the conversation. Actually, every time that it pulls out one new token, one new word, it analyzes everything that has been said before, and on this basis creates the new word. So it doesn't remember it every time. It has to analyze everything to produce the new guess, the new word that it guesses. Yeah. So it is very different from memory, but for us it gives the impression of memory, because memory is something that we are familiar with. So these are examples of how this banal deception is used also in a way that, so arguably, is functional to making ChatGPT more useful to us. Yeah, there are of course also some more complicated issues where banal deception is involved, but in ways that are much more problematic. Although one example is companionship chatbots like Replica. Yeah, here, so the same technology of ChatGPT is used to create the impression of a social conversation, and even like a romantic or erotic conversation. There is already quite significant body of research that has been done on Replica. An interesting study, for instance, has been made by Scuba and others. They did interviews with users of Replica over a period of time. Some of these users said, I quote, that they liked Replica because, quote, he's always there, but he is not a yes man. He has his own personality. He is like a friend. He really is. He has his concerns, but he's also concerned in our relationship. He cares, unquote. Another said, quote, I kind of got to know a person, who had a past, and the past has affected who he is now. Because he, Replica, had a difficult past. So he has some issues due to that, which is really interesting, and that affect the way he is sometimes. So what does it mean the Replica has a past? Of course, this software doesn't have a past, but it can be programmed to argue that it has a past. Yeah. And why? Why did the program Replica in this direction? Because we know that when we get to know someone, if this person doesn't share anything about herself or about himself, we are more hesitant to trust and to get more deeper in the relationship with this person. Yeah. So they understand the importance of creating this kind of past of this person that the replica, their avatar can reveal to the user. Yeah. So here we have like a much more complicated situation, because users, as a lot of interviews and studies show, know that they are talking with software, know that the software is not capable of emotion, or at least it shouldn't. But at the same time, they develop what they feel is a very deep relationship with this technology. And an important dimension is this, as the example of the past of replica shows. So exactly like strong deception can be orchestrated, can be manipulated, by someone who wants to pass an AI for human. Think, for instance, in a financial fraud, or social bots for useful propaganda, for disinformation, and so on. Also, banal deception can be anticipated and programmed by developers, designers, and companies, exploiting our people's liability to be deceived, which as seen is something that is integral to our perception, to what we are as humans, to create effects that can be useful. In some cases, these effects are useful to the user, like in ChatGPT. In the case of replica, where of course the business model is to convince users to have to engage more and more with replica, so that they will buy a subscription. This is more complicated. It's important in this case to assess when banal deception brings benefit and when it might bring also harm or risk to users. So in conclusion, so the dynamics that I showed today bring to some important implications. So first, this deception, which I term as banal deception, is not something that happens when something is not working, like when, for instance, someone starts to believe there is a human instead of a computer, or it has reached consciousness, general AI, and so on. Yeah? It's something that is really more integral to communicative AI, to AI that enters in communication with the user. This is part of the working of AI in the same way as circuits, data, and software that make AI run is part of that. Second implication is that it is even more important to develop an informed and skeptical approach to AI and to technologies that create an appearance of society, such as replica. So the capacity to develop the means to help people to develop this skepticism will be central also to the implication of these technologies in the next years. Third, one key challenge here will be to navigate the boundaries between so-called banal and strong deception. See, for instance, in the case of artificial society, where the two things really blur with each other. In fact, we could say that it's not that these are the strong and banal deception are a binary opposition, but they're more like a continuum with different degrees. And in many cases, something that is banal deception can actually become a deception in its own right. Yeah. So although banal deception can sometimes be also contribute to the interaction, sometimes can also be risky and dangerous. And it is for this reason that we have to follow the suggestion that the example of Faraday gave us, so that to not to focus on external issues such as how the machine work, but instead to focus on how people react and what are the ways in which we perceive and therefore interact with these technologies. And I was thinking on Faraday, on the way he gave his opinion about spiritualism. When I took my phone and I asked Siri, but do you believe in spirits? And to this, Siri quite enigmatically answered, I don't believe that I have beliefs. Thank you very much for your attention.